Welcome, everybody, back to Lions Live. This week, we got a lot to talk about. The Lions' last game of the season. 2025 season is over. 2025 is going to be over here very soon. Definitely didn't go the way that I think we all or everyone hoped that it would go. Even from, my standpoint, just covering a team that was 15-2 goes to 9-8 or 8-9 is man, that's quite a change. That's quite a change for me as well. But I do look forward to everything that can happen this offseason. And I got to tell you guys, we're going to be live at the Senior Bowl. We're going to be live at the NFL Combine. We're going to be at the league meetings in April. We'll be at the NFL Draft. We got all this stuff. There's so much great content coming this offseason. Just stick with us, guys. I know maybe there's some apathy flying around right now, but I'm telling you, I think this could be a huge offseason for the Lions and a huge offseason for Brad Holmes and free agency. Hey, maybe he can actually do something. I don't know if everybody saw the video, the article that we put out this week, but the Lions have a real shot to go from just a little bit over $13 million in cap space to over $118 million in cap space if they just do a few things, very realistic things like restructure Jared Goff's contract, restructure Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract, and then Taylor Decker and Graham Glasgow decide to retire, and then you got the rollover cash, and there's just so much money that could be coming into the Lions. And then obviously, as everyone always mentions, which is a totally true thing, is the cap space is going to go up. It always does. I don't know how high it's going to get this year. I'm not sure what the projected amount is, but that's something that is definitely going to happen. And with all that, and with some of the news that was talked about last week, and this is kind of where we're going to go into our first segment of the day here. There's a lot of talk about the possibility of trading for Maxx Crosby. And I mean, I understand. Look, everybody wants this guy. I totally get it, man. He's been a phenomenal edge rusher for the Raiders for his entire career. He has those ties to Eastern Michigan, to the area. It just, it makes sense theoretically that, obviously this guy would be perfect to play for the Lions opposite Aiden Hutchinson. The thing is, man, if the Lions were going to do it, last year would have been the year to do it. And we know that they tried. Dave Burkhead of the Detroit Free Press reported the Lions did call the Raiders last year at the trade deadline to at least inquire on Maxx Crosby. The Raiders hung up on him. The Raiders hung up on everybody. They just have no desire to let this guy go. And I personally, I think that's the way that this whole story continues. I know that there was some issues between Crosby and the Raiders because Crosby wants to play. The Raiders don't want him to play in these last few games because of his injury. And that makes sense from their point of view. Why risk the injury getting worse? So they just shut him down for the year. He left the building. And yesterday it was reported that he was back in the building. So I don't think the Raiders, number one, I don't think the Raiders are going to trade Crosby. I don't see it happening. So you could pretty much just kind of shut that idea down just based off that alone. From the Lions side of thing, now, I do believe that the Lions are going to be able to have a better offseason. I do think that Brad Holmes, I don't have any reason to believe that Brad Holmes has not learned from the mistakes that he made last offseason. I have no reason to believe that he's a guy who's going to double down and try to prove everybody wrong. I just don't see it. I do believe that the Lions will go out and spend more money this offseason. But with that said, Maxx Crosby's contract it's just a total nightmare. And it's not because it's too expensive. The Lions can afford it. But we're talking about if the Lions were to trade him, the good thing is, let's just start here. If the Lions were to trade for Maxx Crosby, here's the one good side of it. The Raiders have kind of lost a lot of their leverage on this whole side of things. So if the Raiders wanted to do the deal, their best time to do it would have been last year as well. Before they did the big extension with him, they probably could have got a couple of first-round picks. Now he's 29 years old. He has a gigantic contract attached to him. So now you're looking at probably like 2 second-round picks. That's just an estimation of what I think it would cost to get Maxx Crosby in Detroit, which, I mean, hey, Lions could do that, right? They got that. They got those picks, and that's something that they could do. But if you sent those picks over to the Raiders, you get Crosby. He's making over $30 million on this cap hit in 2026 alone. That is a lot of money, man. That is more money than some quarterbacks are getting on their annual salary right now. So you're going to have to find a way to bring that cap hit down. Now, I know that, we've opened up a ton of money for the Lions with all these restructures and the retirements of Decker and Glasgow. And I talked about how you have $118 million. But, man, you still don't want to be paying a 29-year-old edge rusher like $35 million a year. So, ideally, what you would do is restructure his deal again, too. But that pushes you to a point where now you almost have to give him an extension in 2027 when he's 30 years old, 31 years old. You kind of have to do it at that point, because then you need to spread out the cash again, because those cap hits just keep getting bigger for him as the years go by. So you restructure him this year, then you have to extend him in 2027. Now you're stuck with Maxx Crosby until like 2030. And man, that is that's a long time. And he's going to be like 33, 34 years old. He might not even be playing at that time. And you're paying a ton of dead money into that contract. I love the guy. I wish you could be here, man. It would be so cool to have Maxx Crosby on the Lions, but it just doesn't make sense financially, for many angle for the Lions. It's just bad. It's just bad business. If Maxx Crosby were 25 years old, I would say go all in on this, but he's 29. And that just makes a big difference. So I don't see the Lions making this trade. Frankly, like I said before all this, I don't think the Raiders are going to trade him either. So I love you too, Kyle. It's my friend Kyle, says he loves me. But I will say, I do think that there's a trade that the Lions can make. And I've talked about this in some previous articles. I think it's Kayvon Thibodeau. I think that's the deal you got to make if you're the Lions, because I think you can go to the Giants and you could offer them maybe, on the high end, maybe that second round pick, but I think you could probably get away for less, maybe a fourth, future third, something like that. And you get a guy who you have contractual holdover in 2026. He's still going to be on his rookie deal. You're paying for his 5th-year option. Essentially, it's not going to be a ton of money, but then you get to decide from there, hey, if we extend Thibodeau, if he has a great season for us, we can extend him, and we'll see then how much we want to pay him. And while Thibodeau can be good, I don't think he's elite. He's not a guy who's going to get elite cash. He's not somebody who should get a giant contract. And that's why I really think that would be the smartest deal for the Lions, is to go for Kayvon Thibodeau, and if they're going to make a trade for an edge rusher. So that's kind of what we're thinking on that one. And that's where my head is at. Maxx Crosby would be cool. I just don't think that it will ever work contract wise. So we got to move on from that idea. So let's go to our next segment. We want to talk about the Bears. Hey, look, I know it's a meaningless game, but I still think there's a chance that the Lions can win this game. And I just look at this Bears defense, and man, they're not that good. I think we're all kind of looking at this defense and thinking that they are good because, hey, they're the division champions and they've earned that right and all that good stuff. But when you look at this defense on the Bears, this is a group that has allowed the 5th most total yards in the league this year. They're 11th in points for. If you want to go analytically and DVOA, they're bottom of the league, like 24th, I believe it is. They're not a very good defense, but what makes them good, what hides all their deficiencies, and I wrote an article about this earlier this week, is that they lead the league in turnovers. They lead the league in getting turnovers. And that's what Dan Campbell wants the Lions to be so bad, because, man, it hides every problem that you have, because everybody can look at that stat sheet and say, man, they lead the league in turnovers. They have to be a good defense, right? So that's kind of the thing. That's how you beat them. That's how you beat the Bears. The Bears are 1-2 in games that they haven't allowed or haven't been able to secure a turnover. So you go into this game, you got to be clean. This has to be absolutely clean football all the way around. You got to make sure you don't fumble. You got to not throw any picks. And the good thing is, the Lions, before that debacle that happened on Christmas, the Lions had only had 8 turnovers all season. They were like the best team in the league at not turning the ball over. So you go into this game, you do that same thing. Do not turn this ball over. Do not allow the Bears to have extra time with the ball. And I think you've got a real shot to win this thing. And you go out with a win in week 18 in a season that doesn't mean anything. And I think it tells you a lot about the players on the field. And as we know, as Dan Campbell said on Monday, they're going to be watching to see how some of these players respond to playing a meaningless game. I mean, this is really the first meaningless game that the Lions have had to play in the Dan Campbell era. I mean, you go back to 2021. Yeah, they weren't going to make the playoffs. They went into week 18. They went in really the back half of that season after the bye week on a totally different direction that they had been in the first half of that season. Dan Campbell started calling the plays. Everything started going well. They beat the Vikings. They beat that Cardinals team who was really good at the time. And they were going into week 18 against the Green Bay Packers, looking to prove something, looking to prove that, hey, we're coming, we're on our way. Like, I feel like they had more to prove in that week 18 game than you might think. And then 2022, as we know, knocking the Packers out of the playoffs, showing that it was their time. 2023, they won the division. 2024, they wanted that first seed. Now 2025, it would appear they have nothing. And I really can't figure out what they're playing for in this game. And I really think, as Dan Campbell mentioned, this is the game where you start separating the boys from the men in some terms. Like, this is where you go, hey, who's going to be with us no matter what? Who's going to be with us when we suck? Who's going to be with us when we're good? This is the game where you find those things out. So I'm definitely going to be paying attention to that too, just as much as Dan Campbell is, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I do believe that there's a way that the Lions can win this. And then on the petty side of things, if you could just keep Caleb Williams from throwing for 4,000 yards, if you could just keep him under 270 yards and keep that Bears streak of never having a 4,000-yard passer going, I mean, isn't that just a good enough win as it is? Even if you lose the game, if you can keep that streak going for the Bears, that annoying little streak that there's so many memes out there about, man, wouldn't that be sweet in just a little bit of a way? Wouldn't that be kind of sweet? Okay, we'll see. I don't know. All right, let's move on to our final segment here, and Jordan is actually going to help us set this thing up. I want to talk about some of my favorite OC options, because at this point, it really kind of feels like John Morton is probably gone after this season. So we'll see. And, I don't know. But let me talk about some guys that I have my eyes on for the OC position. I'm going to start off in Buffalo with their quarterback coach, Ronald Curry. Curry is somebody who has been rising up the ranks in the NFL for some time now, has gotten plenty of OC interviews. But I think the big thing here is that he spent multiple years with Dan Campbell in New Orleans. Campbell knows what he can get out of that guy. Curry went over to Buffalo, has been really good with Josh Allen as well. Eventually, this guy's going to be an OC, and I think the Lions are kind of a really good place for that, because Curry and Mark Brunell together, I think, would be a really nice touch. I think those two could absolutely continue to make Jared Goff as good as a better player, a good player, as good as he's been this year. I think he can continue to be even better. And then eventually you're going to have to start thinking about who that future guy is going to be. And that's why I think Mark Brunell and Ronald Curry together, growing whoever the Lions' next quarterback is going to be, whenever that happens, is is a really good group that I like. Um, Another guy I really like is JT Barrett, who was with the Lions staff the last couple of years, is now the Bears quarterbacks coach. But the big thing here with Barrett is that, and Ben Johnson will tell you this, Barrett played a huge role in the Lions safety specials during Ben Johnson's time here. So we're talking about the stumble bum play. We're talking about the hook and ladder things, all the things that the Lions were doing when Ben Johnson was here, creative stuff. JT Barrett was heading that up. He was helping install that. He was helping to come up with some of those things. So I really like, if you want to bring back creativity to the Lions, I think Barrett is a really good option. The only thing you're kind of looking at is he's kind of young in his coaching career. Next season will be his 5th year as a coach. Is it too early to make him an OC? I don't know. That's something that you got to think about. Another guy who's young, but I see, and a guy who has some attachment to the Lions. I see David Blau as somebody. I think this is a future head coach in the NFL right here, man. I think that this guy, he's going to get an OC job before you know it. He should start getting interviews soon. He was going to get interviews last year, but the Commanders blocked them. The Commanders would not let him interview anywhere because they know what they have. So I wonder what they would do it again, if they would do it again this offseason, if they would block those interviews. But Blau, man, I'm telling you, this guy, he's got the mind for it. He's got the smarts for it. I absolutely think that he could be an OC. But, man, again, it's kind of like Barrett. Is it too early? He's only been an assistant quarterbacks coach in the NFL as a coach. So is it too early to kind of move him into that? That's a good question. So I do believe that at some point he will be an OC. He will be a head coach. Is it or too early right now? A lot of people bring up Brian Daboll. I see that a lot. I see Mike McDaniel a lot, as this gentleman here just brought up. I just don't know. I don't know if these guys, like McDaniel is no doubt about it, a rocket scientist, offensive genius. What is he going to do? Like, is anybody going to hire him as OC? Is Miami even going to fire him? They haven't done it yet. He's still there. So we got to get that out of the way. The Dolphins have to actually fire him. I do believe that he will be fired. And, it's just really to depend on what he wants to do. Does he want to come and be an OC? Does he want to go down to the college ranks? What does he want to do? If the Lions hired McDaniel, that would be great. I don't know how much, I'm not saying that Dan Campbell has to have a connection to this guy, has to have worked with him, has to have had something with him, but I feel like that's going to kind of help a little bit. You want a guy that you know a little bit more, you trust. And while they did have joint practices this summer and Campbell was on the field palling around with McDaniel, and they seem to have a really fun little relationship and like to be around each other. I just don't know, if he sees McDaniel as an option. But I do like McDaniel or Daboll from the sense of similar to what the Eagles did a couple of years ago, last year, I should say. They fired both their coordinators. Well, let's back it up just a little bit. The Eagles make it to the Super Bowl. They lose both of their coordinators. Shane Steichen goes to the Colts. Jonathan Gannon goes to the Cardinals. The Eagles then have a horrible season, get bounced in the first round of the playoffs by the Bucs, the team that would then go lose to the Lions in the next round. And then they fire both those new coordinators and hire 2 legacy guys, essentially. So if the Lions want to go that route, if they want to go, hey, we need an all-star team of coaches on our coaching staff, and we need the best possible guy, I do like McDaniel for that idea. But again, I just don't know. And then, the next guy I like a lot is Brian Callahan, who was the Titans head coach for the last couple of years, was the OC for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know a lot of people bring up, hey, man, he doesn't really call plays that much, but I think that fits. If Dan Campbell wants to continue to call plays, Here's a guy with a really good offensive mind who has the ability to call plays, can do it. We've seen him do it. You bring him in, and this is a guy who has a ton of trust of Zach Taylor, who Dan Campbell has a ton of trust for, has spoken so highly of in the past few years, who they worked together when Campbell was the interim head coach of the Miami Dolphins back in 2015. So I like Callahan as a possibility because I just think that it really works if you want to have Campbell continue to call plays. I don't know if that's the route they want to go, but those are some guys that I really like. Next week, I'm going to kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of the names that are out there and see kind of who will fit the best, who they can go with. But until then, let's go through here and let's see if we can answer some questions. So we'll start here. Kyler Murray to the Lions. No, I don't see that happening. That's unless Kyler Murray is going to play backup for this team. I don't see how that works. And then even if you do, let me look up his current contract here. Oh yeah, that's kind of that's a pricey. That's a really, really expensive backup quarterback right there. $53 million cap hit next year. It's not happening, man. So no, Kyler Murray to the Lions. That's a no-go. That's it just doesn't make sense. And again, and I've said it on every live that I've done, and I fought with everybody on Twitter all season long. The Lions have a very, very good quarterback. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm not even going to like dance around it anymore. This guy, top 5, top 2, top 3 in every statistical category in the NFL right now, including, and look, I don't care about what happened against the Vikings on Christmas Day, man. Like, if you can't look at that game and see that he's out there with a third string center, a backup left tackle, a hurt left guard, and a rookie right guard, and you can't see that the center snaps 2 unbelievably horrible snaps that that turn into fumbles, and Goff throws one really bad interception, that's on him, but the other one, he's got a guy in his face because he's got nothing but pressure all day long. If you can't see that, then man, I don't know about you. I don't know about your football knowledge. I'm sorry. I just don't know. I look at Jared Goff, and man, this is a guy coming into that game who had the lowest turnover rate in the NFL and still has, I think, like the second lowest turnover rate now. What are we doing? And if your thing is Goff needs a perfect offensive line, how did Jared Goff go into this season and have arguably the best year of his entire career with this horrible offensive line? And like, it just doesn't fit, man. It doesn't fit what people are saying. So no, I don't think Jared Goff's going anywhere. Dan Campbell said it yesterday. He's going nowhere. He said it, I mean, about as hard as you could say something. He's going nowhere. It's not happening. Jared Goff's not getting traded for Joe Burrow either. That's not going to happen. Look, the Bengals are the most stubborn team in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. They have always been the most stubborn team in the NFL. And I'm getting it. Some guy on TikTok keeps saying over and over again, stop supporting professional sports. Shut up, guy. How do you block somebody on here? Like, he said it like 50 times in a row. Okay, you're blocked. See you later, pal. Anyways, look, the Bengals are the most stubborn team in the NFL. They're not going to trade anybody. And that's why they didn't trade Trey Hendrickson. That's why they've made exactly one trade at the trade deadline in like the last 20 years, and that was in 2020. This team doesn't move on from anybody. Joe Burrow's not going anywhere. They love Joe Burrow, and I don't think, Joe might try to force his way out. Maybe. I doubt it, but he's not going anywhere. It's not going to happen. So that one is out. We're out on Joe Burrow. We're out on Kyler Murray. Jared Goff is your quarterback in 2026 and beyond. Do I see any chance Ray Agnew gets hired as a GM? I think that, man, it's really interesting with Agnew. I don't know how this guy has not gotten a ton of interviews in the past few years. Like, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. He is not only helped build this Lions team to a Super Bowl contender, which, hey, man, they still are. I don't care about this season being bad. We know why it was bad, not because of coaching or because they got the wrong players or whatever. It's injuries. It's couldn't force turnovers. They didn't sign an edge rusher. They didn't get a better offensive line. You go do all those things, they're right back where they're supposed to be. But anyways, not only has Agnew built this Super Bowl contender Lions team, but he also had a big hand in building that Rams team that eventually did win the Super Bowl. I don't know why teams are not like, man, I got to sign this guy. Part of me thinks it's because he's older. He's older than most of the candidates for GM. And I think that it's unfair, but like I think every team wants basically what the Jaguars got. They want a guy who looks like he's 17 years old and is in his 20s and is like he's the rocket scientist, he's the next whiz kid. Like I think that's what teams are looking for more so than a guy who's been proven. And unfortunately, that might keep Agnew from being a GM. But as you mentioned in here, if Agnew were to get interviews and get hired as a GM, yes, the Lions would receive a 2 third-round compensatory picks. They'd get one in this year's draft and one in next year's. But again, man, I don't see it happening. But we'll see. I've talked about this a lot this year. I wrote about this a lot this year. The Lions have spent an awful lot of time at colleges, sending scouts to colleges where some of the best quarterbacks in this draft are going to be. And, they're clearly looking at other players while they're there too. I'm not saying that they're just there for quarterbacks, but I'm not going to put it past the Lions to fall in love with a guy and draft him. We've seen them do it before. So if they saw a quarterback that they really liked going into this draft, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if they spent a first or maybe a second round pick on one of those guys, or maybe a 4th round pick. Maybe you get like a Carson Beck later on in the draft and try to grow him. They definitely will probably have their eyes out for a backup quarterback no matter what. I think Kyle Allen's great. He is a free agent. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him back. He did really well for them this summer. So we'll see where that goes. But the guy I wanted, Jordan Mailata, or Jaden Mailata, sorry, from USC, he's out. He's going to go back to college. And so maybe next year, I think that you try to get that guy in 2027. That would make me happy, at least. But that's what I've got. Let's see what we got on TikTok here. Based on DC's comments yesterday on the radio, I would be very surprised if they drafted a quarterback. No, I mean, it makes sense. I get that. He definitely does not want to trade Jared Goff. He doesn't have any indication that he wants to do that. He slammed that door shut as hard as that door could possibly be slammed shut. But I still think, you have to start looking towards the future. And I think we have a very interesting quarterback thing going on in the league right now where teams are moving on from guys way too fast or they're putting guys into the fire too fast. And it's become like an epidemic at this point. So I think the way you kind of want to look at things is how the Chiefs and the Packers and some of the other teams did. They took their time with Patrick Mahomes. The Packers took their time with Jordan Love. And some of the other teams have done that too. And I think there's a lot of value in the idea of Jared Goff's your guy till 2028, 2029, whatever it might be. And then you have a guy kind of waiting in the wings for 3-4 years that you selected high, that like you see a big future in. You develop that guy with Mark Brunell and Dan Campbell and whoever the OC is going to be for a few years. And I think you got a guy that you could throw in to the starting role. He'll be like 24, 25, and he's ready to go. I think there's a ton of value to that idea, and I fully support the Lions doing something like that. I think it would be huge. But that is that's going to do it for today's episode of Lions Live. As always, I appreciate everybody joining in. Totally had a lot of fun with everybody, and have a happy new year, man. Be safe tonight. Be smart. it is a work day. I don't know. Some of you got to work tomorrow, so don't stay out too late. Don't drink and drive. Just be cool. Be smart. Have a good time. Spend it with your loved ones and your friends, and just be alive tomorrow. So we'll see you guys on Sunday. Have a good day.